We consider ourselves a social data and conversion company. We worked with some of the biggest names out there in the gaming space, PewDiePie, Markiplier. We were basically responsible for providing them with their annual revenue and getting them paid throughout the year.
Any particular trends you're excited about or you bullish on?
We did so many campaigns this year working with so many influencers, but how do we continue to take a second and think about the impact that it's doing across audiences and make sure that it's healthy and that we're leading to something that, again, is a more positive experience? That's something that I am bullish on, quite frankly.
So how do you see or foresee AI continuing to impact the influencer marketing industry?
One thing that continues to be an interest from our clients is leveraging AI influencers. We have partners that ask, is there a way to export this data? Is there a way to get performance dashboard that also includes not just native and paid, but like performance by way of sentiment per influencer, for example? And so having those honest conversations truly with our partners has allowed us to think about our roadmap.
Hello everyone, this is Shubham Tiwari. I'm the head of content marketing and socials at Phyllo, the universal API for creator data. And I welcome you to another episode of Impulse, Google's #1 rated podcast on influencer marketing. Today, I'm excited to have Tiffanie Petett, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Influential.co with us. Tiffanie and her team are connecting brands with the right influencers through smart data-driven strategies, which we are going to unfold today. She has worked with brands like Walmart, Sephora, and DoorDash, and she is here today to share her insights on everything from AI in marketing to what makes a great influencer partnership. Tiffanie, welcome to Impulse. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Merry Christmas Eve, at least on the day that we're recording. So yeah,
Thank you so much, Tiffanie, for making time for us on the Christmas Eve. We really appreciate that. Let's start on a fun note. If you could choose one fictional character to represent Influential as its mascot, who would you choose and why?
A mascot. It's so funny because I did cheerleading in high school, so I immediately thought of like animals or something like that. But a fictional character, I'd have to say probably Olivia Pope, if you're familiar with the show Scandal. Kerry Washington plays Olivia Pope, who's basically, the nation's greatest problem solver and crisis management person. And I want to say when it comes to influencer marketing, Influential has definitely stepped it up to be that sort of answer to anything that comes up. Yeah, Olivia Pope, I'll go with that.
I need to check that out because I have not watched the TV series, but I'll definitely do that afterwards. So yeah, it's great that you have given us, some cool examples because creator economy is about this, right? This cool vibe that we maintain. Influencer marketing, it's a very fun space, and you have worked across various industries. So what first sparked your interest in influencer marketing, and how did you come to lead Influential.co?
Yeah, that's very interesting question. So I got into social media as soon as it started. So it was founded around Instagram was founded in, I think, the year is 2010. And I had just graduated from undergraduate school. I was headed off to LA to go to grad school at USC. And I knew I wanted to work in a space that was always new and trendy and fun and innovative. I definitely didn't want a boring, office job, if you will. And so I leaned into social media or anything that had the word digital in it. And actually my first job was a beauty editor at a digital media website, but it was a startup. So it was, of course, you're a beauty editor, but I was also PR. I was digital strategy. I was anything that I could get my hands on to get that learning experience. And as a beauty editor, we heavily relied on beauty bloggers who were on the internet creating tutorials and, whether it's how to create a cat eye or how to do your hair. And it came to a point where, we as editors were creating this video content to showcase these tutorials, but then we leaned into some of these bloggers to feature them as giving them a leg to stand on, giving them a platform to be on, thinking that it was providing value to them in some way. And I think it was for a minute until all of a sudden the 6 million monthly viewership that we had on the website was what these bloggers were getting on a daily basis. And so It came to the point where they started asking for compensation to leverage their expertise and their content creation skills. And that sort of was an opportunity for me and my colleagues to manage up and, really pitch the idea of paying these bloggers. They were asking for like $50 at the time to get them to create content for the website. And the management was like, why would we pay someone? They should be so honored to be on our website, right? And it's like, well, if you look at the data, the limited amount of data we had at the time, it was very much so obvious why we were getting more value from them than, vice versa at the time. And so I spent a couple of years there and then stumbled upon a company called Maker Studios, which was essentially a talent agency for YouTubers, I'd say. And we were categorized with gaming and family, lifestyle, fashion. We worked with some of the biggest names out there in the gaming space, PewDiePie, Markiplier. I worked with some of the beauty girls like Camila Coelho and Shameless Maya. And we were basically responsible for providing them with their, annual revenue and getting them paid throughout the year. We had a certain amount of money that we had to guarantee them. And so we would do that by way of, branded opportunities that came through. And that was very much so that company was a multi-channel network, the MCN model at the time, very, very profitable. Company then got bought by the Walt Disney Company. And we were then, very, very deeply invested as like the digital savvy, influencer marketing savvy folks on this side of the space that was educating the larger Walt Disney Company after that. And so it started with things that, leaned digital a bit. And then once influencers were at play, it was like a no-brainer. Let's use them in any way, shape, or form on any platform, YouTube being a massive one. But,
Right.
Instagram started a monetization model as well. And then paid advertising launched there. And the rest is history. Musically was definitely massive. And then that, being TikTok of it all these days, it definitely leaned us in a very big way to be innovators and pioneers in this space. So I'm here now.
Yeah, really great to have you on the show as a representative of Influential. So
Yeah.
let's talk about Influential.
Yeah.
How did you come to Influential, and what exactly Influential does?
Yeah. So after the Walt Disney Company, at that point I had done talent management, talent strategy, talent selection, very much so chasing payments for talent. But the data side of the industry was a little bit, at least my knowledge base was, definitely a big open space or there was a lot of white space for me to learn and grow in that area. So I came across Influential, realized very much so technology company. We consider ourselves a social data and conversion company, really. Like influencer marketings are through and through, but data at the end of the day allows us to continue to be the best when it comes to influencer selection. Measurement, as you know, is a massive part of why influencer marketing as an industry has gotten so much popularity and has gained revenue share year after year. And so coming across Influential, was familiar with some of the other technology platforms that allowed you to analyze data on the social front, but it was leveraging a technology system to definitely sort of maneuver through an organization as a managed service was new. And, being at the company and being the power users of our technology, you definitely see the system, you see the value of data to our clients, but you also see the value of data, technology, and insights for our internal teams to help make informed decisions. And so it's been great to see what can happen when you can leverage technology for the betterment of process, organization. Like we're very much so pod structured. I can only speak about my pod, but my pod this year ran over 400 influencer campaigns, working with over 1,000 influencers. And so that's just one of the many pods that we have at the company.
Wow.
And, we just got acquired by Publicis agency. And so there's definitely a lot to be said about the power of technology and influencer and using these data and insights to just make better informed decisions with influencers.
Right. So can we call Influential an agency now? Is that the business model you work on essentially?
I think for the sake of conversation, agency works, but we definitely more so lean as an influencer vendor, like a social data vendor of record for a lot of our partners. We work in a variety of different ways, whether we're allowing for creator selection and sourcing and like
Right.
arming our partners with just influencers, or we're doing fully like managed service campaigns where we're tracking and analyzing and doing measurement. We also obviously have like an innovation and measurement arm
Right.
that's backed by our research and analytics division. So whenever paid media becomes a huge part of your influencer like marketing campaign, we have a team in place that can help strategize and make informed decisions there. From a measurement perspective, of course, we're leveraging like the API that we have ingested into our technology with the platform, social platforms directly. But there's been times where clients have asked to measure their impact even off social. So think about foot traffic sales or foot traffic lift or in-store sales lift, tune-in lift, if you're thinking about some of our entertainment clients on television. Those sort of implementations and those sort of measurement opportunities have also fueled the way in which we operate with different partners and layer and I want to say build out even more the technology to better accommodate some of those asks and some of those objectives that they have.
Right. And how are you leveraging AI in your day-to-day operations?
Yeah. So day to day, my team and I leverage AI to source influencers. I think that's like the base the base level of it.
Discovery of influencers? That's what you mean?
Yes. Discover
New influencers.
new influencers in our technology and even off platform as well. So our technology right now holds about 4 million different influencer accounts. If you're a public account, people become TikTok influencers every single day. We have a team on the ground that's also ingesting information on a daily basis. So that number continues to grow. And sourcing influencers, by way of keywords is one thing, by way of, what's in a bio is another thing, but leveraging AI to even ingest or search information based on the overall vibe of a platform, of an influencer account is one thing that's been increasingly beneficial just because clients don't always want to use the tried and true, beauty, fashion person or parent, mom, dad. They're really looking for someone sometimes who's emerging or trending or on the rise or is just someone who's like brand new, who maybe hasn't even done a branded opportunity before, but there's a lot of potential to create a relationship with them. Because of that, we have to be a little bit more nuanced in how we source for them. They don't always put in their bio or leverage a ton of keywords to be found on their platforms. So how do we say someone who's, artistic, creative, and outgoing, but also vegan in some ways, So leveraging AI to not only pick up keywords, but to pick up feelings or vibes within the imagery of their content on social platforms has been one way. And then thinking about it from a profile perspective, and searching content from the beginning of that account being created on that platform, or at least being public on that platform, we can search things like, cozy aesthetic or faceless content imagery only or flat lays. And, they may not be writing that in keywords, but we can, use AI to better pick up content that does depict that kind of imagery.
Okay. And how do you get the intent of collaboration on, from a profile? Because, see, you may be discovering, let's say, how many influencers do you discover on a daily basis?
Ooh, on a day, I mean, it's never ending. So I said this year we ran 400 campaigns with over 2,000 influencers. Yeah. So that's in a year. So divide that by the days, like at least 2 influencers a day, including weekends.
How many? See, so how do you come to take a decision? Okay, out of the 100 people we have chosen, so how do you know they are ready to collaborate with a brand? They are open to collaborate. How do you get the intent part?
Yeah. So if they're already in our technology, there's a sort of opt-in opportunity where we already have a connection with them, whether it's by way of their email, their management teams, or any sort of filter that they can be alerted of opportunities. If it's a net new creator, we've gone so far. So this brings me back to, if you recall, the NEAL legislation a couple of years ago, the ability to work with college athletes on branded opportunities. A lot of them didn't have management or agents at the time, and they hardly even knew how important it could be to put contact information on their profiles.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just student
Yep.
athletes. And so at that time, we went grassroots and we were DMing folks to see if they'd be interested in opportunities. And of course, DMing them for a proper contact, whether that's a phone number or an email to send more information. If they do have that sort of connection established, we have relationships with so many management companies and agencies that are constantly pitching their talent for these opportunities. If it's someone who manages themselves, we have those relationships and we just reach out directly. Typically, it's definitely easier coming from some of our folks that have been in relationship with them already. So someone who's not just like a nameless person or faceless person, just an email on the back end. So we definitely use our first names. We don't use like a contact form or anything like that. If they're in our system, it makes it a lot easier. Then speaking of like colleges and universities, we do have relationships with a lot of these university, whether it's like the sports, like coaches, teams, like managers, things like that we can ask them if they have any students or athletes that'd be interested in working with us. And so there's multiple filters. I think it's about trying to figure out what's going to be most accessible for that person. If we're thinking about different countries, for example, like WhatsApp is actually very great as an outreach tool to connect with people directly versus like an email.
Right. So you're saying manual, approach where you're DMing everyone, and if you can meet them in person. So is there any like AI tool that you use for that? How do you plan to scale that? That's what I'm trying to understand.
So that's what I mean. If it's in our technology, definitely helpful because that tends to be a way to scale our approach. We can reach out to 4 million people at one time, for example, but one thing that I just find really valuable over the years in working in influencer marketing is having a personal relationship with influencers is always going to help make that campaign a better success. And so as much as we can start by scaling, at some point, we definitely want that one-on-one interaction with them, whether it's through the chat filter in our technology and we're doing it through that, or if it's, as simple as an email, we try to make that happen. But I think there's no one way to go about it these days, just because so many people have different needs and different working styles that they prefer.
Right. And you also manage those creators who don't have agents to begin with, let's say the varsity students.
We don't manage influencers directly. We work non-exclusively with the world. And so it's any influencer. We're not beholden to, again, just what's in our technology. If someone's looking for someone who is very specialized or a unique person or, again, a new student who's never been an influencer before at all, we're open to working with them. And we just do a process where we can include them in our technology and get them OAuth essentially access so we can analyze their data a little bit more thoroughly, but there's no management of them directly. They can work with other folks outside of us as well.
Right. And speaking of analyzing the content, how do you, manage, let's say the expectations of a brand? Basically, essentially doing the brand safety part where a creator, maybe who fits the bill, but they have said something problematic in the past. How do you go past that hurdle?
Yeah. So from a proactive perspective, we definitely have some like legal parameters in place, making sure that there are sort of like morality clauses put into our agreements with our partners, where if some influencer goes rogue, we'll do our best efforts to make sure like they're replaced and we'll help mitigate that situation and mitigate the impact that it has on our partners. This is where relationships come in really handy. We like to put it in writing, but then also get some verbal confirmation that in being, for example, this was an election year, we had to have a lot of proactive conversations, especially with some of the partners that we work with that are of a restricted category. Think pharma, think finance, and that really can't have any surprises that happen. Proactively, we were in a place to make sure that we're vetting out anyone who could potentially, not pass our brand safety criteria that we're looking for. As the campaign's happening, we do have some real-time monitoring going on. For example, in the comments, if anything seems a little bit too profane or too against sort of like what the brand brief is going about. Not saying like negative comments, but things that are like kind of outrageously polarizing. We do have some real-time monitoring that happens in the first 2 weeks of a campaign flight. And then, even if it is 6 months later and something does pop up, we tend to, again, have really honest conversations with influencers and partners, but then just try to remedy the situation however best fits that client's needs, whether it's removing the post or taking something down. Like, we have certain things like that in place.
So has that ever happened? I mean, have you?
Sure. I'm like, personally, I think I might be a little bit lucky. Let's see. Not recently, definitely not recently, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of active influencers out there who use their platform to speak their voice. That is definitely on one side versus another versus, neutral in tone. And we've been in a position to, pause relationships with influencers who want to go that route, especially in this last year. Say we've worked with them for many years, but this year, they're stepping up. We applaud them for that. But like from a brand perspective, there's just some partners that aren't the best fit for them. And so we've definitely come across those circumstances. Nothing too outrageous, but I'm sure it happens. I mean, it's kind of like the good and not so great, I guess, in the influencer space. It's kind of like high risk, high reward sometimes. We love these personalities and these content creators for what they do, but we have to appreciate when they want to use their voice for whatever they feel and believe in.
Right. And do you also vet their content? Let's say 2 years ago, they may have said something or wrote something that does not align with the brand. So how do you analyze the previous, the history of the content?
Yeah, our technology does that. So it does like a historical look back based on keywords and imagery. So if it's like a certain amount of nudity or anything like that in there, or we also do like background checks if they've had like DUIs or anything like that. That's typically done through our background checking.
Right. Cool. Speaking of, checking or tracking stuff, what's your current system for tracking the performance of an influencer marketing campaign at Influential? And what are the KPIs basically for the success?
Yeah, that's a really great question. There are no two campaigns that are the exact same at this company.
Wow, really? Okay.
Definitely not, because every client has their own specific needs. They might be similar, but for example, if a campaign is what we call a talent model, so it's a campaign that's just based on influencers and content, no measurement study, no performance or paid media attached to it, we're going to leverage some of those insights or data metrics that the platforms allow us to see. So that's like views, story taps, shares, engagement, etc. When it comes to including campaigns that do include paid media as a component, we know that unlocks or opens up another layer of metrics that we can measure, like click-through rate or view-through rate, landing page, like conversion rate. And then when it comes to measurement studies, there's obviously, depending if it's like a brand lift study, you're measuring favorability, consideration, purchase intent, awareness overall. If it's sales lift, obviously sales, tune in, how many more people watch the content because of our influencer campaign, for example. It definitely depends. I think the tried and true metrics that were established in the last, year or so with the ANA, those measurement guidelines or the framework is like a great starting point, depending on what the KPI is of the campaign. But for every campaign, it's, potentially a similar objective, but various secondary objectives. And we want to make sure the client themselves has the best story to tell for their, leadership teams or for whatever they're doing internally on their end. So they vary, but they're very common. The most common ones like engagement rate, reach, impressions, things like that are pretty standard. It's just when you get a little bit more sophisticated and you're talking about email signups or app downloads or, again, unique visitors to a brick and mortar location versus recurring visitors to a QSR. Like it can definitely just vary just depending on what they're looking for.
Right. And, as influencer marketing landscape becomes more tech driven, how is Influential looking to leverage new technology to improve campaign tracking or optimization?
It's a good question. I know a lot of the updates and the enhancements that we're making to our technology now come out of need from our partners. So we have partners that ask, is there a way to export this data? Is there a way to get a performance track or a performance dashboard that also includes, not just native and paid, but like performance by way of sentiment per influencer, for example. And so having those questions in honest conversations truly with our partners has allowed us to think about our roadmap a little bit more specifically and put in milestones to improve the technology over time. And then there's opportunities where we're looking at sort of like attribution partners and other vendors that we can leverage to do things that are more innovative in this space. So of course, social media is the, end all be all for the work that we do. But what happens when you take a piece of content online and you put it in digital out of home environments or connected television environments or, in front of trailers in movie theaters, for examples? Those are some new and innovative things that we're exploring, especially moving into the next year, that can just sort of help drive like what we can do from a tech and innovation perspective.
Right. And with, the rise of AI, we are seeing, AI changing so many processes nowadays. So how do you see or foresee AI continuing to impact the influencer marketing industry as a whole in the next 5 years?
I mean, I think we find it very valuable for drafting correspondence with our influencer partners. ChatGPT has been incredibly helpful for a lot of reasons, and helping just streamline communications in a massive way, especially when you're working with the volume of creators we are. But I think there's a lot that we don't know. I think that, one thing that continues to be an interest from our clients is leveraging AI influencers in some way. So think about virtual influencers, for example. And we've always been on the side of saying, while it's a virtual influencer, many times it still has a real and valid audience behind that influencer. And so it's about maintaining that and making sure we're working with the team that's, behind the virtual influencer, that they are, morally safe and ethically like sane people. But in that we can establish a campaign framework that does the messaging in the way that we want them to. And it has to make sense, obviously, for the brand at hand as well. It makes a ton of sense for design or tech driven brands. It may not make the most sense for, food brands, for example. But we know that that's increasingly become an interest. And so working with those like virtual AI influencer teams to see what they have in store from a content calendar perspective, and this just sort of thinking about the future of that influencer. What are they doing in the next couple of years? Like we saw them in college for 7 years. What are they doing now after that, as someone like leading into their 20 somethings, or at least their audience? If they were similar, they're also aging up with them. So that's been interesting. Using it to just I think streamline processes internally, I think is going to be extremely helpful, especially as we continue to grow within the larger Publicis org. We want to make sure that we don't falter in our communication styles. We know that we're working with teams all over the world. We're a fully remote company still. And so making sure we're finding ways to be more efficient internally, and then help our clients obviously become more efficient, at least with their influencer programs, I think is going to be key.
Right. Speaking of efficiency, what AI tools do you use on daily basis as the director of strategic partnership?
Besides our technology, let's see.
ChatGPT is one, and
ChatGPT has been super helpful. We do have some transcription capabilities for times where we're having meetings internally or with clients. That's been helpful, but I think we're always open and open to learning more. I think that we have a whole suite of tools that we haven't explored yet under the Publicis umbrella that we're really excited to. So yeah, more to come, but anything that'll help scheduling and, writing notes, taking notes, that's always super helpful. I know we have some some plugins for email correspondence with priority partners too, that has been super efficient and helpful.
Wonderful. Speaking more on data and AI, how do you think, social data is going to change, or the way we measure the success of influencer campaigns is going to change? Any particular trends you're excited about? are you bullish on?
How do I think it's trends? Oh, let's see. I mean, I know that there's a lot going on with TikTok right now.
Oh, yeah.
But I love how much it's opened up our
Yep.
capacity to work with different influencers and those that, may have been underrepresented or been on the platform for themselves. Like, it's definitely opened up a revenue stream for these kinds of creators. Anything that allows for, it's kind of like quick turn content is what I want to say, that makes us feel more connected to each other on social, I think is helpful. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because, too much social media time is also an issue that we're facing as a nation. And so as much as I want to be in a space where we're valuing these platforms for allowing us creative expression opportunities and,
Right.
again, revenue opportunities, business building opportunities for creators. We also want to make sure that the content is positively affecting people. And so being in a space where we can help sort of like facilitate some of those creative conversations, I think is really important because it's so fast. I just said we did so many campaigns this year working with so many influencers, but how do we continue to take a second and think about the impact that it's doing across audiences and make sure that it's healthy and that we're leading to something that, again, is a more positive experience? That's something that I'm bullish on, quite frankly. I teach in this space too. So I'm trying to make sure students, obviously, who tend to hopefully work in this space feel that sentiment too and don't just see it as, another way to make money, and something that's very superficial. I think that there's a lot of impact that we could do when we try to do it correctly.
Right. So how do you, find these students to teach? Do you go to, these, in physical settings, or do you find them again through your
Oh,
technology? Yeah.
yeah. So I am teaching at the University of Southern California an online program for graduate students called Influencer Relations. And so, yeah, it's a new program under Public Relations Management Strategy and Innovation,
Okay.
PRISM for short. And yeah, we had our first session last summer with a cohort of about 10 students that are 2 years into their professional careers that are looking to do and learn more about influencer. And we're going into our next session this year. We have 3 sessions full of at least 15 students. So it's gotten big in the next semester. But yeah, teaching them the basics of influencer stuff. It's awesome.
Wonderful. You're contributing to this space through various means. 400 campaigns with over 2,000 creators, as you mentioned earlier. I'm sure all of them were, optimal in their own way. But, if you could design the perfect partnership between a brand and an influencer, what would it look like? And how would you measure its success?
Perfect partnership. Okay, so it's definitely going to be one where it's very much so authentic and genuine between brand and influencer. Doesn't necessarily have to be an influencer who's used the product or familiar with the brand, but their ethos need to align. Their energies, like, obviously need to align. The relationship, like, is the long story short of it all,
Right.
needs to have been established between them. And then there is a collaborative workflow, but nothing that is necessarily too laborious on either end. I think that there's a way to go about the campaign process and content creation process with an influencer that feels endemic and feels authentic and true. That isn't, a call every single day with that person. Like, there is going to need to be.
Micromanagement.
Yeah, yeah. We don't want micromanagement. We definitely want creative expression and authenticity to be established, but communication, I think, is also going to be key. And then something that isn't just like a one-off post or video opportunity, like something that does continue to flourish throughout. I want to say a year partnership is typically ideal. We like to
Okay.
start with partnerships that are like a quarter long, for example, maybe like 3 posts in 3 months, for example. But things that are not just like, we just need you for this one post in February. Like, we definitely are looking to make more informed and established relationships between brand and influencer because we know it's going to be beneficial to their audience if it's a great fit. And then if we do a good job on selecting the influencer and they, are approved on their end and vetted, for competitive separation and all of that, that's great. And if they perform really well, we can potentially look at reactivating them again later in the year. But I think you can get more learnings out of multiple pieces of content per influencer than just doing like a one-off opportunity. Like you really want to know if it landed by at least comparing to twice in an opportunity.
Wonderful. Speaking of partnerships, with data playing a huge role in influencer marketing, how do you see tools like Phyllo APIs, like brand safety, social data, filling into influentials' approach to ensuring campaign success?
I think anything that helps with brand safety is going to be beneficial to anyone working in influencer marketing for sure. So knowing that that's something that we're focused on daily and our partners are focused on daily, I see that that could absolutely be beneficial. I think that there's a world where there's a lot of noise in general. And so filtering out the, not just the things that are, I think, more high level when it comes to brand safety, like, again, profanity or competitive separation, like really thinking deeply about things that might not actually occur even on that social platform, like looking across like digital forums, if you will, or even in real life. I think that those sort of things go into brand safety as well. How someone might have showed up at a professional conference, for example. Like we want to be informed, I think, at every step of the way and understand like every persona that this, influencer might have in order to make them a good fit for a campaign.
Wonderful. Looking ahead, what excites you the most about the future of influential, and where do you see the company heading towards in the next few years?
Very excited about, again, the acquisition. I think it's opened us up to a lot of resources that are going to be really valuable, just knowing that we're working with some of the biggest advertisers in the world. There's still lots of companies that have never tried influencer. And so like, that's really exciting to see that there's such white space still of like top brands, that haven't touched influencer in very sophisticated capacities. And so very much so thinking about ways to identify, what those needs are for social and influencer for a partner, but then ways in which we can come in without just, picking something off the shelf and putting it right in front of them, like really having conversations to build out bespoke campaign opportunities is like the thing that, every person in a relationship in a professional sense or even romantic sense needs to know and want and be curious about. We want to make it bespoke and customized. We don't want to just, have your run of the mill influencer posting. Like we want to understand what those needs are and what's going to make them be heroes within their own organization. And so that's really exciting just to hear about or just to know about the opportunity that there is to just like level up in this space, because the bigger it gets, the more credible we can continue to make it, the more it's going to be, highly valued, especially here in the US.
Wonderful. I love it that you use the word bespoke. I heard it after so long.
Yeah.
Thank you for using that. And please bear with me. I have a little cold, so that's why I'm disturbing everyone right now.
Thank you for being here as well. Then.
So, Tiffanie, last couple of questions or other rituals we make our guests go through. Give us a book recommendation. You have already given us a TV series recommendation at the beginning. Your favorite book or whatever you're reading right now, anything.
I'm a little delayed in this. I think many people who are watching this might have already read it, but I'm reading Michelle Obama's book at the moment, and I'm going on vacation to truly finish it and dive into it because it's written so beautifully. And I want to take a second now that, I think I got it when they honestly were just leaving office and I was just sitting on it. I was like, I'm not in a good place to read this just yet to really have it be an impact on me. But that's definitely one that I would recommend. I'm on chapter 1 and it's like, I can't wait to leave tomorrow to go to Mexico. And that's all I'm going to do for the next 10 days.
Wonderful. Happy holidays. Happy holidays to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for doing this on the Christmas Eve. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Last thing, would you like to nominate anyone for our show?
Ooh, nominate. Let's see. Yeah, there's so many. Which place can I take it? Or do you have a need? This is me trying to be consultative. Do you have a need for a specific? Do you have a need for anyone
anyone who's building for creators in influencer marketing, or maybe, your favorite creators also, we can host them on a roundtable.
I don't know if you've chatted with Michael K over at Match Group just yet. Michael K. He's the director of communications and public relations over at Match Group. He's an excellent resource for information. And he also teaches actually in the space as well at NYU, I believe. He's an amazing person to connect with. I think he has a lot of things to say in the space of digital influencer, PR, all of that.
Wonderful. Tiffanie, thank you so much for coming on Impulse. And we are right on the cusp of breaking into 100,000 followers on YouTube. So this is a special episode for us. By the time it comes out, we'll be crossing that threshold. And we need your support, whoever is watching. Please let us know what you thought of this episode. You can follow Tiffanie on any platform. I guess, Tiffanie, you're on TikTok, Instagram?
Yeah, TikTok, Instagram, TK. Yep. Tiffanie Petett on LinkedIn. You can, hit me up.
There you go. So if you'd like to, follow Tiffanie on your favorite platform, please go and find Tiffanie. And please, in the comment sections, let us know what you thought of this episode. Until I see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Impulse, the influencer marketing podcast, is brought to you by Phyllo. Phyllo is the easiest way to get access to authenticated creator data from hundreds of different platforms. To know more about Phyllo, visit getphyllo.com. That's getphylo.com. Also, make sure to search for Influencer Marketing Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast listening platforms. And don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Phyllo, thank you so much for listening.